Welcome to Defend Philly. I'm Vani and Hanamirian, and alongside Louis Cocco, we are starting a podcast about all things Philadelphia Flyers. Yep, exactly. From game breakdowns to analysis, all of the above. So let's get right into our first episode. Today, we're going to be breaking down what our biggest worry is for the Flyers this season. So is it goaltending or missing playoffs for the sixth straight season? I'm going to throw it to Louis to start.
Okay. Thanks, Vaughn. Yeah, excited to be doing this podcast. I think this is going to be it's a really exciting opportunity for us. The Flyers definitely fell out of favor for a little bit there. While what's it been almost a decade of rebuilding and terrible terrible hockey and maybe made the playoffs a handful of times in the last 10 years. So it's definitely been tough for Flyers fans, but our goal for this pod is definitely to get you all amped up, ready to go and get it all fired up. So yeah, between the goaltending and missing the playoffs for a sixth straight season, that's definitely hard to stomach. It's hard to even say that as a diehard Flyers fan. However, obviously the end goal and what we're looking for as Flyers fans, as hockey fans in general, we want good hockey. We want playoff hockey. They always say in other sports, like, oh, you just got to make it to the end and hopefully you can get hot. Um, it's not always the same as hockey. I feel like hockey is one of the more difficult sports just in general. Especially it's a trying season. It's a long season. Um, but for me, saying all that, you might think, well, his take's going to be that missing the playoffs for a sixth straight season is the most worrying thing for Lewis, but it's actually not. So I think the goaltending, and I have another point that I'll toss in there a little bit later with something else that worries me. Whoop-de-doo. I know this is supposed to be a positive podcast, but I mean, there's always going to be something, at least the last few years, or maybe we'll see. We'll see. Temper the expectations maybe a little bit, but um, definitely goaltending. The plan isn't necessarily to make the playoffs at least this next year. I think Rick Tocchet, and Danny Briere, Rick Tocchet, and Keith Jones have made it pretty clear that, the idea is that we are finishing up the rebuild, and now it's kind of time to start making the climb back up from being rock bottom, which Danny Briere indicated that we hit rock bottom right around the end of last year. I think what was it, 8 games left in the season when they fired John Tortorella. I think that's what
Yeah.
Danny considered rock bottom. So yes, while making the playoffs is definitely worrisome, I think the goaltending situation is a little more worrisome, and we can get into that a little more later, maybe break it down a little bit. But I want to hear what's your take. What are you thinking? What's worrying to you about this coming season?
Goaltending for sure. I mean, the playoffs are important, and obviously, we'd love to see a winning season. We'd love to see the Flyers make a playoff push, but right now we're going into the play. Like, hypothetically, if we make the playoffs, we're going into the playoffs without our starting QB. Like, you cannot not have a strong goaltender. If the Oilers showed us anything in the playoffs, you need a strong goaltender. And we have become, and I hate to admit this, but a goaltender graveyard. Like Philadelphia really is. And I think that the rotations that we have, honestly, I'm kind of optimistic about this year with the rotations we have, but in the past, like it just wasn't working. We have not had strong goaltending. And I think that's a huge reason of why we're missing the playoffs. And I know we're still rebuilding. So if we get the goaltending situation figured out and don't make the playoffs, I'll be happy with that. And yeah, as Briere said, like we hit rock bottom. So from here, like we're kind of dealing with the bare minimum. And part of that rebuild is getting each position player, especially the goalie, which is the most important person on the ice, getting that position filled with someone that's reliable, steady, and we know will perform is the most important right now. And so that's my biggest worry is getting that done because in the off season, I mean, I thought we were going to go get a vet. Um, we did sign a goaltender, but I don't know. I was hoping for like a Jake Allen, but then the Devils snatched him up again. And so I'm a little hesitant to see what's going to happen. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm right in line with you. I think, you know, you stole my example. I was going to say, well, if Edmonton showed us anything, it's that goalies really matter. Skinner's just a disaster of a goalie, and it showed because they've gone to how many, I think what's it been, three straight finals, and they've no, two straight finals, at least
Two.
two straight finals, and they've lost both times, and Skinner's not played well. And honestly, in multiple situations in those finals, they've gone in not knowing who their starting goaltender was going to be, whether it was Picard or whether it was Skinner. And that is scary for a cup contending team or a team that's supposed to be winning a Stanley Cup. They always say Edmonton's almost there. They have all the pieces in place. And I mean, you can't really deny it. We had a repeat of the Stanley Cup Finals twice. So those two teams out of the East and the West have showed us that they're the ones that are built to go to the finals right now. And honestly, the biggest difference really was the goaltending. Sergei Bobrovsky, former Flyer. I was talking to my dad. I don't know
The
how
one
many
that got
former.
away.
I was the one that got away, and I don't know how many former Philadelphia Flyer goaltenders there were. Alex Lyon, Sergei Bobrovsky. I believe Picard was in our system for a little while. Was in the Flyers system. There was at least one or two other ones within the whole scope of the playoffs that were formerly Philadelphia Flyers goalies, which is tough to see. It was kind of funny. They mentioned the beginning of Bobrovsky's career several times, and it always started with the Flyers. So even though we weren't in the playoffs or in the finals ourselves, we got some mentions, which I guess was a weird constellation prize. But you're right. You know, the Flyers have become a goalie graveyard for the past few years. I have faith in Sam Ersson. I think he's shown flashes that he can be a solid goaltender. I mean, he played really well with Team Sweden for the men's worlds this past season. Um, and not even that. During the season, I mean, he had an all right season. He got injured, which was part of the problem. And he had some shaky starts here and there. But I have some faith in Sam Ersson. What I don't have faith in, and to your point, I was hoping we would get a veteran in the deadline or in the offseason at some point. Um, Dan Vladar, who we got from Calgary, technically a veteran. He's not that old. He's in his mid 20s. He's played in the league for a few years now, but hasn't historically been a standout goaltender. I was looking at some of the goalies that Calgary has produced. Guys like Dustin Wolf, who was fifth in the rookie, no, fifth, second. Is he second? He was top five in the rookie of the year this past year. And as a goalie, that's pretty unbelievable. He's a goalie in Calgary. Jacob Markstrom came out of Calgary. Another great goalie. Even going all the way back to Mika Kiprusoff. The Calgary Flames have had some pretty decent goaltenders in their recent history. So that gives me a little bit of hope for Dan Vladar. Maybe he was trained up pretty well in Calgary, and sometimes it seems like guys that leave Calgary end up having good seasons. Jacob Peltier, Andrei Kuzmenko. We got both of them from the Calgary Flames when we sent Farabee
Froston,
and
Fairby.
Frost over there. Andrei Kuzmenko actually ended up being a pretty big piece for the LA Kings when they went to the playoffs. So maybe guys like leaving Calgary, and I'm hoping Dan Vladar can maybe be that guy. He leaves Calgary and has a standout season, but he really needs to prove it to me. His career numbers are not good. He's got like an 8.9 something save percentage,
898,
8.98. His goals against average is 3 for his career. It's
2.8.
just
Yeah.
it's it's not good. That's not good. And having two goalies that have a lot of hiccups and have a lot of bumps on their path and probably will have a lot of bumps along the road. It's hard to rebuild. It's hard to, develop a team, develop any players when we're just getting killed every night.
Hear me out though.
All
If
right.
you look at Ericsson's numbers, the last time he was performing, like his peak performance was that the year Carter Hart left. right? So he was doing really well as the not the first string goalie, but the backup kind of step in when needed. I think he can't handle the pressure of being the number one goaltender. And I think if you have him in the backup position or in a rotation, he will perform well, which is why I'm optimistic about this season because he's injury prone. So we know for a fact that he cannot be our number one, and he got thrown into a really bad situation when he was when Hart left, and he was just like they were just thrown the Flyers in general were thrown into a really bad goaltending situation that we've been trying to fix since then. But I think with this two goaltender, you have two guys who aren't maybe completely consistent, but can be reliable when they come in and out. I'm optimistic about that kind of rotation and Harrison going back to who he was and the player he was when Hart took majority of the pressure and he was just kind of there when needed.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess what you're thinking is that Dan Vladar is going to take the lion's share of the games. Is that what you're hoping is the case that Dan Vladar steps in and takes most of the games?
I am, which is crazy because I know he hasn't played that many NHL games. He
No,
played what 30 last year,
30.
and he doesn't have that many starts. But I think that it could be a possibility because where do we have like we're at rock bottom. We were last in the league for save percentage last year. What point? Yeah, we were last in the league. We were 32nd. There's no way to go much lower, right? Like we
Yeah,
can hypothetically, but basically like where we're at, I think I'm willing to risk anything. And if the two of them want to go for it and try this, but permanent solution and we need a permanent goaltending solution. But I don't think that's going to happen this year. So we have.
yeah, not it's definitely not going to happen this year. I'm certainly excited for the future of our goaltending. You have guys like Zavragin who's down in the KHL at least for another year. You got guys like Carson Bjarnason who's going to be probably the starting goaltender in Lehigh this coming year. I honestly would not be so surprised if Bjarnason makes his NHL debut this coming season just with how shaky the potential for our goaltending. We have two backup goalies in our tandem right now. Dan Vladar, I really hope you're right. I hope Dan Vladar can somehow stun us and be this unbelievable goaltender. But if we're going to look historically, he has been nothing but a backup. Playing 30 games last year behind a rookie of the year candidate in Dustin Wolf. He didn't get many games. So we currently have a goalie that has played backup for his entire career and a goalie who thrived most when he was in a backup situation in Sam Ersson. So I think both of them really need to make big strides, take a big step this year. Maybe the fact that we're not looking to be this competitive team will take the pressure off of them. Although I don't really think last year we were even really trying to be competitive, and Sam Ersson didn't seem like he stood up super well to the pressure. However, to your point, he was getting the lot. He was kind of the front runner of the tandem. Ivan Fedotov, that experiment, I believe, has ended. He's probably going to spend most of his season in Lehigh. Alexei Kolosov, that dude is just, he doesn't even really want to be here. He definitely does not want to be in Lehigh. I know they sent him back to Lehigh. I believe he's on Lehigh's roster right now. Because they said Dan Vladar and Sam Ersson is going to be the tandem going into the season for the big club. So that leaves Alexei Kolosov in Lehigh, and he might go back to Russia. Minsk, is it Minsk? How do you say the name? Minsk.
Minsk, I
He's
think.
probably
Yeah.
yeah. He's probably going to go back to Russia or Belarus. I think he's from Belarus. Either way, he's going to
Well,
go back. Go ahead.
that's another point that concerns me is bringing in people from the KHL and that transition because it hasn't always been smooth, particularly in the net for Flyers. Like we haven't had a great transition and haven't had great. There have been great prospects that have come up from the KHL, but then the second they hit the ice in the orange and the black, there are issues. So I'm like hesitant to put a lot on younger players coming up through that process.
That's why I think it's good that they haven't rushed Zavragin up here. Let him develop a little longer. The plan is I mean, he still has a year or so left on his contract in the KHL, so he can't even come up here at all yet. So let him stay out there in Russia. If I had a guess, he'd probably come over here from Russia, play in Lehigh for a little while. And that's probably not even this season. He's a couple years away. Bjarnason, I think there's an argument that he could really make his Flyers debut. He could maybe not crack the roster out of camp. I don't think he'll crack the roster out of camp just because you have two guys that have been playing in the NHL for several years in Vladar, in Ersson. They're going to make the roster. They will be the starting tandem. But I think Bjarnason's right there on their heels, and he looks sharp. He really does. Unfortunately, when I covered the Phantoms this past April, I didn't get to see him play. It was Parker Gahagen who was in net for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. And Gahagen has since gone back to the Bridgeport Islanders. He was never going to be the answer for the Flyers NHL goaltending woes. It just wasn't going to be him. He was already old. He had never played in the NHL before. He played NCAA hockey. He played in the ECHL. He played in the AHL, but never in the NHL. And being 30 something already, he wasn't gonna make the NHL roster. And doesn't matter anyway because now he's in the Bridgeport Islanders, on their roster and in the Islanders system. So
The Flyers' lack of depth with goaltending is what worries me the most. I mean, you have
yes,
teams, I'm biased, you have teams like the New Jersey Devils that have prospects upon prospects that are just building. And you have players in the NCAA, you have players in the AHL, you have players that are ready, if needed, to come up and expected to make an impact on the team. We don't have that. We have a lot of players that we're hoping could maybe work out. So I think will be not an issue that's instantly addressed. Like, I think we're going to run with whatever we have. But I think long term, we 100% need to build a stronger farm system of goaltenders, first of all. But second of all, a big name like the Carter Hart that we can bring in. But not Carter Hart, but the big name that we can bring in and can person for us in the net.
right. So here's my hypothetical. Think about this. So Artur Silovs. I had talked about this before. I've talked about it on the radio. I've gone on a few rants now to some people that I've talked to, but Artur Silovs, he was the backup goalie in Vancouver. Thatcher Demko was a name that I was hoping that the Flyers could acquire before the trade deadline or in the offseason at some point. Or I'm sorry, free agency. I keep saying trade deadline. Before the free agency point or at some point in the offseason. It really did seem like Thatcher Demko wasn't so happy in Vancouver. There was some drama to end their season, at least the past couple years. I don't think it was quite as bad a few
Well,
years ago as it was.
Vancouver just has drama.
Yeah. Yeah. With Pedersen and Quinn Hughes wants to leave. Well, Quinn Hughes wants to leave. We don't really know if that's
Leave, doesn't
true.
want to leave,
Right.
wants to play with his brothers, not
Right.
immediately.
Right. There's all kinds of stuff. And I was hoping that the Flyers hiring Rick Tocchet could have, some draw over here and we could maybe get a guy like Thatcher Demko who seemed, a lot of these players seem to have a lot of respect for Coach Tocchet. So I'm thinking to myself, hey, maybe we can secure Thatcher Demko on, a contract. Now here's the issue. And this will play into the Silovs point that I'm going to make. I think Danny Briere, he didn't want to block the prospects that we do have, not that we have so many in the pipeline, but he didn't want to block the prospects that we have coming up in Bjarnason, in Zavragan, from eventually making the team in a few years. If you got a guy like Demko, formerly the runner-up for the Vezina a couple years ago, he is injury prone. But when you potentially sign a guy who is in the Vezina trophy conversation, that's not really, you're not going to sign him for like a couple years. That's going to be a We got to secure this
Contract.
guy. Right. That's got to be a contract. And I, I, I can look up the terms of his contract that he got in Vancouver most recently, but um, that's
But while
not
you're
a guy.
doing,
Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, finish your thought.
Oh, um, that's not a guy you can just sign for short term, which is what Danny I think was looking for. So when he resigns in Vancouver, that obviously thinned out the goalie market, at least for the Philadelphia Flyers. We ended up getting Dan Vladar. Um, you said we were looking maybe to get Jake Allen. It seemed like Jake Allen wanted a long-term contract. He signed for 1 point something for 5 years. That wasn't going to be a move.
Ridiculous.
Danny wasn't going to make that move. Alex Lyon ended up going to Buffalo. That's another goalie off the market for us. There were a few goalies that we were kind of looking at that I thought that I was interested in. Definitely Allen, definitely Thatcher Demko, maybe Alex Lyon. But with those three guys off the market, there wasn't a whole lot we could do. So what I was thinking, and here's my hypothetical for you: Arturs Silovs. He was, like I said, he was the backup in Vancouver when Thatcher Demko got hurt. He had that really weird, like, ankle or lower body injury. It put him out for a little while. So they had Kevin Lankinen and they had Artur Silovs, they were running that tandem. Now, Silovs didn't have a stellar, he did not have a stellar showing this past season. However, he did lead Vancouver to the Stanley Cup playoffs in 2023, 2024. I was actually watching the Amazon documentary, and Artur Silovs was Vancouver's goalie. They did get knocked
Oh,
out, but he was their goalie. So he has playoff experience. He's a very good goaltender. Kind of imploded. Maybe he didn't implode, but he didn't have a fabulous showing in the NHL this past season when he was serving as the replacement for Thatcher Demko, or in the tandem with Kevin Lankinen and Thatcher Demko. They send him back to Abbotsford, which is their AHL affiliate, the Abbotsford
yeah.
Canucks. Don't you know the Abbotsford Canucks go out and not only do they make it to the Calder Cup playoffs, they win the whole thing. And Artur Silovs is the MVP of the whole tournament. Let me look up his stat. It's unbelievable. His stats were unbelievable. Um, but while I'm looking the
But
stats
like,
up, go ahead.
that's the kind of player we need.
Right. Here's the problem. He's young and he's probably looking again for a contract. So if you sign a guy like that, you would therefore be blocking some of the prospects that you have in the system. So I think that's maybe why Danny didn't go out and get this guy, because we have two promising goaltenders in the system, and if you sign a guy like Artur Silovs, what are you going to do with the other two that are in your system? I mean, Zavragin isn't that far away.
No, and we're also at cap. Like we don't have any more money to spend.
Not
So
right
that is
now.
so that unless you want to money somewhere by either
Right.
trading away one of your big names or literally trading away one of your big names, then deal with what you have. But the only thing that I was going to bring up that does
Mhm.
again, and I sound very optimistic, and I think this is the second time I've said I sound very optimistic, but I think maybe I am optimistic about Flyers goaltending, is that now with Talkit, I'm hopeful that these guys will have a better chance mentally to thrive in that, because we all know goaltending is a mental game. Barbarella, like he literally walked out of press conferences when asked about goaltending. He would say crazy things to the media that didn't necessarily uplift his players. And we know he had issues all around with his players and getting along with them, speaking well about them to the media and stuff like that. But I'm hoping that specifically with goaltending, when you have this position that relies so heavily on the mental game, I mean, to keep bringing up Carter Hart, we saw how Carter Hart's game started to decrease when his mental game started to go bad. And so it was like he was working with sports psychologists, all of that. It's such a mental game to be in net. And so I think that having a coach that's going to the media and saying, when asked about how you're improving, saying, meh, I'm not going to talk about that, or storming out, maybe to have someone like Talkit who will maybe say something positive about you, or dare I say, stay in the room. will help improve the morale in net. And maybe some of these guys that were not able to have success last year will be able to have success knowing that their coach is backing them and standing up for them and supporting them. So that gives me a small beacon of hope with our current roster because, like I said, we don't have much room for flexibility. We have no room for flexibility in terms of money. Like we are cut off as of now.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And my thought process with the Seelobs thing and that hypothetical was you wouldn't have won out and signed Dan Vladar. You would have just gotten Seelobs. Um, Now the Pittsburgh Penguins traded for him, and one of Danny's, I don't want to say excuses, but one of the things that Danny Briere said was, well, the goalie market, they know we need goalies, and it was going to be really expensive. Artur Silovs was traded for 2 low-round picks and a guy that's maybe played 4 NHL games. Like he hasn't cracked an NHL roster. So he was not expensive, and he's only worth $895,000 because he's on a rookie contract. So it would not have been expensive to get Artur Silovs. Listen to these stats though. In 21 games played last year for the Abbotsford Canucks, his goals against was 241 with a save percentage of 908. Now, that's good for the regular season. Now, get this. Playoff time, okay? In the Calder Cup playoffs, yes. The AHL, you're not playing top tier talent. It's not like you're playing guys like Alex Ovechkin. It's not like you're playing Sidney Crosby's of the world. It's not like you're playing Connor McDavid, although he has had experience playing against guys of that caliber. When you get to the Calder Cup finals, that's as close as you can possibly be to playing that NHL level talent. Well, he really turned it on in the playoffs because in 24 playoff games, his goals against average was 201 with a 931 save percentage and a cool 5 shutouts in the playoffs. I mean,
So those are the stats of someone that's aged out of the league.
right, right,
Or his stats show that he has or outgrown the league at
right.
this point.
And he was not expensive. And if your argument is that, well, everyone knows Philadelphia needs a goaltender, so they're going to charge you a premium. Pittsburgh has no goaltenders. Tristan Jarry's terrible. Nedeljkovic got traded, and Blomqvist is equally as bad as Tristan Jarry. So everybody knows the Penguins need a goalie. I was listening to Elliot Friedman's 32 Thoughts podcast. This was it was right before they kind of went on their little summer break. I believe it was the end of June. I don't remember what exact podcast episode it was, but he said that currently the only team in the entirety of the NHL that is in a rebuild mode is the Pittsburgh Penguins. He said not even the Flyers, because we've made moves that have now shown that we're on the way up. Yeah, technically we're still in a rebuild, but we're coming out of the rebuild. Pittsburgh
Yes.
is selling. Pittsburgh
In.
is in a decline, a current decline. So if Danny wants to go out and say, well, the goalie market was a little too saturated, it was a little too expensive for us, I don't buy it. I really do think it was about the blocking the prospects. He didn't want to sign a young, really promising goaltender that would eventually take the spot of your homegrown prospects. And I get it, but I mean, this is
You
always the
got to
question
take
with
the risk
pros.
sometimes.
This is the
You got
question
to.
with prospects versus proven or semi-proven guys. With the Phillies, that was the whole thing. It was, well, do we give up prospects and get bigger names? Everyone was afraid of letting go of the prospects because, well, they could be something someday. I get it,
You got to take the
but
risk, especially when your team finishes last
right.
in save percentage the year before.
And
Last.
I and Seelobs could have cracked the roster. He could crack
At
the
least we
roster
would have finished at least like 31, you know?
a little
I'll take
better
anything but last. A little better. Okay. So
with
Lewis,
stats like that. A little better. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
now I have to ask you, we know your worries about this season. What excites you the most about this season?
Yeah. So there's a million things. I've often been said to be optimistic. And, it sounds like I might be a little pessimistic right now, but I've often been uh I've been often known to be optimistic
Well,
when it
I
comes to
will
the Flyers.
note
Yeah.
Hunter Brody did mention our names and say that we're the two that have our heart in the team and we're the ones that have hope in the team. He's out of it.
Yeah,
So
which is a
we're the
little bit
optimistic youth.
crazy. Yeah, that's right. We're the youth movement. We're the optimistic youth movement for the Philadelphia Flyers. We should trademark that or something. The optimistic youth movement. Maybe that should be the pod name. The optimistic. Yeah, it'd be a long pod name. We have to like abbreviate it or something. Um, what I'm excited for the Flyers is actually Rick Tocchet. I went on record saying that I was kind of indifferent. I talked about it on the radio. I was I'm not really so sure. Way back when they hired him, which really wasn't that way back when ago. It was only a few months ago. I really thought like, all right, this is going to be the old boys club. They're bringing in the former Flyer, and that was always the knock. But as the offseason went on, and as he started doing some press availabilities, as Tocchet went on the WIP morning show, had a great interview there, extremely optimistic, was very excited to be back in Philadelphia. I've seen reports come out that he had several offers on the table, chose to come back to Philadelphia. Uh, you know, he excites me because he seems like he's willing to teach these guys. Um, he he came out and said it. He said, "I want to work with these players." He is a more hard-nosed seeming coach, but you can't get any worse than John Tortorella. John Tortorella did not, I mean, you said walking out of press conferences, ripping guys, doesn't have their back, doesn't want his players to be creative, even though that's the way the game's going. And, I can talk about that at a different time. But
That's our
Rick
next
Tocchet,
episode.
maybe that would be the next episode is the way the game is changing. Oh, maybe we should write that down. But Rick Tocchet, yeah, but Rick Tocchet, the most recent example, at least that I saw, Rick Tocchet went on the Nasty Knuckles podcast. I think it was last week or the week before. And did you see the viral video of Matvey Michkov? Yeah, he said he didn't want
The
to dump
dump
and
and
chase.
chase,
Yeah, he said he
the
didn't want to
best.
dump and chase. It's fan. I mean, look, I want possession. You gotta have puck possession. You gotta have puck possession. That's the way things work. And honestly, the Flyers have not recently been very good at dumping the puck and then getting the whole dump and chase thought relies on you going and actually winning the puck battle then.
They're good at the dump, they're not good at the chase.
Right. And then, even if they're good at the chase, they can't regain puck possession, which is the whole reason you dump and chase is because you want to wear the other team down, get them on their heels, and regain puck possession. So they haven't been really good at anything related to dumping and chasing. And so a knock on Rick Tocchet it seems like that's the type of system he coaches a lot of dump and chase. So Matvey Michkov makes that viral video. He says, I don't want to dump and chase. The first time somebody told me to do that, I was like, what are you talking about? He was not happy with that.
Said he didn't even know what the dump and chase was for a
Right.
while.
Right. So Nasty Knuckles, they asked Rick Tocchet, did you see Rick Tockett's his
No.
reaction? You didn't see his reaction to it. So they asked him, hey, did you see what Matvey said about the dump and chase? And he said, oh yeah, that was really funny. I'm gonna, I'm gonna bust him when I see him for that. Like it was pretty funny. He said, but look, when you have a guy as talented as Matvey Michkov, hold the puck and make a play. He that was the perfect response. He said, I want if Matvey's coming in to the zone with a head of speed, a head of steam, and he can find the lane, and he has all the skill in the world. We know that. We saw it in his sophomore season, or sorry, in his freshman season.
Freshman year.
He he was unbelievable with puck control. So if a guy like Michkov with all the skill in the world is going into the attacking zone with a head of steam, Rick Tocchet wants him to keep the puck. And that's just one small thing, but I thought that was the perfect response to that question. A lot Rick John Tortorella probably would have said, no, you got to dump it. Like if I'm telling you to dump and chase, you dump and chase. Rick Tocchet's willing to bend. He understands that guys have skill sets. He wants to utilize those guys' skill sets. He wants to put those guys, the high skilled players, in the best position that they can use their skill. And if that means foregoing the dump and chase, he's willing to do
I'm
it.
not gonna bench you for the dump and chase. What do you
Right.
mean? For not
Right.
dumping and chase?
Right.
No, but can
Because
you see this? Can you see like I envision this, which is a Tippett breakaway and then Matvey Michkov ready to go. That is
just
all
flaw.
I want to see this year. But I need Tippett to have puck control and I need everything. That's been my big offseason wish. I was like, he has the speed. He's one of my favorite players just because he's insanely fast. But his puck control and puck handling while going at that speed needs to catch up to him. And so then the other thing that I was going to say that you pointed out was I know that the Flyers are occasionally bad at things that they should be good at. I know you mentioned, they're not great at the puck and chase. My favorite from last season that I'm looking forward to this season is the power play because I'm hoping that when we're up a man, we play like we're up a man and not like we're down a man. You know, just like the bare minimum in that.
And it was a weird anomaly the past 2 seasons where the Flyers played better on the penalty kill than even strength or a power play.
Yep,
Eh, Like,
insane. And there's
explain it.
no way to explain it. That is
No.
something that will never make sense to me. And yeah, I have no words. I literally was watching it and I was like, I was hoping box
Yeah.
up advantage. It was worse for us.
Every game I watched, I watched with my dad and our good family friend, and that's what we would say. It's like, why don't we just play a man down all the time? Because whatever system we're running, like, and it wasn't even that, complex of a system. Like, whatever system we're running, whatever mindset Tortorella has these guys in when they're down a man, it's tenacious. I mean, we led the league in shorthanded goals. Konechny was an animal on shorthanded. He scored. I gotta look that up. I don't know how many shorthanded goals Konechny scored. Let me say.
He was
But
insane. But
but
I'll
unbelievable.
say so that's my answer for what excites me the most about this season is that first line. I am so excited to see. I want to see a Konechny, Zegras, Mishkov. That line, the amount of highlight goals, highlight plays we are going to see come out of that line are going to be incredible. And I think, go ahead. What are you going to say?
No, no, I was gonna say. So you have Zegras centering that line then
I do. I think if
because
Couturier can put his ego aside and go down to the second line, he's his performance hasn't been where it needs to be. Still a great player, but he's not a first line center. He's not.
no.
And I think if he can genuinely put his ego aside for the better of the team, which is what a captain should do, which is a whole nother topic on who should be the captain of the team. But if he can do that, Zegras take that first spot. I think it'll be good because Zegras and Mishkov can keep up with each other in terms of hockey IQ, speed, playmaking. You need to be able, with a player like Matvey Michkov, you need to have someone on the line with him who can predict what he's going to do before he does it. And I think Zegras can be that person. And not putting them on the same line because Sean Couturier thinks that he's still the best player or he can handle it. He can't. And I think he needs to literally just put his ego aside. And I want to see that top line. Even if you just test it for a couple games, it would be so good. And
And I think go
maybe,
ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I'd say maybe would distract us from the fact that we don't know what's going on in net.
And if maybe we can get some offense, if Harrison leaks a few goals or Dan Vladar does whatever he does, maybe maybe we can win a few games. Maybe we can win some high scoring games, which wasn't always the case last year. We were not the most high scoring team. We didn't have unbelievable offensive skill besides Matvey Michkov. I'm on Daily Faceoff right now. And according to their source is the 2025 off season and the line combos they have right now. So I don't know if this was from dev camp. I don't know if this is from practices they're seeing, but the line combinations on Daily Faceoff's website. I love Daily Faceoff. I go on their web for all kinds of stuff. They have first line, Michkov on the left wing, Coots at center, and Konechny on the right wing. The second line, which is this is interesting. They have Zegras on the wing, Christian Dvorak up the middle, and Owen Tippett on the right wing. I'm not surprised Owen Tippett's on the right wing on the second line. To your point, has all the skill in the world. He just needs to put it all together. But Dvorak centering the second line is a little bit interesting to me. I thought he might be the third or fourth line center. However, his numbers in the faceoff dot are pretty good. He was like in the 50%, which is, top pretty great for a center. So if Dvorak can remain consistent coming here from Montreal, I'm okay with that with him on the second line. The third line, again, I don't know. This is probably all subject to change. Forrester on the left wing, got Noah Cates up the middle, and Bobby Brink on the right wing. And that fourth line, they have Nick Delorier on the left wing, Rodrigo Abels. I'm actually a big Rodrigo Abels fan up the middle, and Garnet Hathaway on the left wing. Rodrigo Abels spent most of his season in Lehigh. Big dude. Can shoot the puck, not afraid to be physical. I liked his game a lot. I think he's definitely got a spot um, on the roster if he can. They did just re-sign him to I think it was a two-way contract, so he might be back and forth between the Flyers roster and the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. But I'm actually, those centers don't seem
Excited.
too bad to me. I would like to see a little more skill. I think Abels might bring a little extra skill to that fourth line than maybe we had before. I mean, I really did like Paling though. I was a fan of Paling. He went in the
Okay.
Zegras trade. I was a fan of him. I liked his. He was more gritty than anything, but I thought he had
But
flashes of skill here and there.
do you like him more than Zegras?
No, no, certainly not. We
There we
fleeced Anaheim for that. Um, I I just hope maybe he can play center. Uh, I just don't know who you would stick on his wing. I mean, hopefully it would be Michkov and
go.
Konechny, with him
Yeah,
centering the first line. But
we'll see.
it seemed like the GM out there in Anaheim said that Zegras' you know primary position, he felt as though it was center, and they stuck him on the wing. Obviously, he had some falling out there in Anaheim too, but if Zegras can step it up and play some wing, I think he might be he might be he might be a
Let's see.
legendary flyer one day. We'll see.
We'll
We
wait
won't.
and see. Well, no, I think we should call it here.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Thanks for a great first podcast.
Yeah, this was great. Stay tuned for more episodes. I'm sure I'll be posting this on Twitter. I created a YouTube page that currently has one video on it. So, um, I guess because Twitter doesn't let you post videos that are longer than like a certain time period or have like it's
The whole
the
bit.
size of the file. It's pretty ridiculous. So maybe I'll put this on my YouTube. I don't know if you have a YouTube page you could put it on, but
Yeah. But
we'll see.
thanks everyone for tuning in and stay
Yes.
tuned for more.
Stay tuned for more.